University, so I can't list everything that you do. It's impossible and we'd run out of time. So we are extremely grateful that you have decided to come in and help us out with a talk today. And we thank you for sharing some of your experience in the years that you've honed your craft. And we're looking forward to learn from you over this next little bit. So without further ado, let's give a round of applause more.
I don't do this very much anymore, so I got to really hop myself up on Coca-Cola so that I can keep a steady stream of gab going. Yeah, the grasping at what kind of a topic to choose, I sort of thought that maybe I could kill two birds with one stone. Is this take the time to organize what people tend to see as survival equipment. Yeah, interesting story. I have two communities where I have actually participated more than normal in the search and rescue situation. Probably more at Dawson Creek than any other place, because I would spend almost 3 months a year for the past 17 years in that community. And because maybe I'm a bit of an outsider, you get better incorporated than if you're a homegrown person, you might say. And the other place is Whitecourt, because I live so close to Whitecourt. Many other search and rescue chapters, or whatever you call yourself, would often phone. And so some person has been appointed to carry on program or education and so on, gets a hold of my name, phones me and says, "Oh, do you do such and such?" "Oh yes, I do such and such." "Well, could you come to our club and put on a session?" He says, so once he determines that, then he says, "I'll get back to you." And then when they get back to me, what often happens more than not is that person says, the person has turned down this. They don't see the point of us search and rescue people learning anything about survival. Now that's happened quite often, because a lot of people don't see themselves as survivalists when they're into search and rescue, because they haven't taken the time to sort of realize where it fits in. Well, my way of looking at it and says, if you're called upon some school or somebody nearby that wants you to put on a session, you're probably going to talk more about how not to instigate a search and rescue situation than you are to sort of explain the process of how it all goes on. And so on. And granted that when you're in search and rescue, your objectives and what you're trying to do and achieve, like for example, in search and rescue, you would probably think that living off the land is totally irrelevant, because it's obvious it might be irrelevant. Whereas a person who's surviving is quite concerned that they are worried that if they don't have anything to eat day after tomorrow, they'll die of starvation, because they don't know that you can go a long, long time without eating. And you might be healthier 30 days later without having eaten than when you started, because you were overweight to begin with and things like that. So generally, humanity, I call it human nature. I perceive in my older age and having knocked around for a long time that people in general are their own worst enemies because of their attitude. Because they think they know something, but they don't really know the real story or the real knowledge. But they live by their own knowledge, which is erroneous and could get them into further trouble. But they don't know that until they get a chance to try it out and find it doesn't work. Things like that. Anyway, too much Coca-Cola, I don't know what I'm talking about here. That's a little bit, I could say more on that, that's philosophy, but let's get down to something more tangible. Now when we're putting together kits, for some reason in Dawson Creek they chose the vest. I don't know where they got the idea, but the more I work with vests, the more I find that a vest has got a certain application. This is the forestry type, the forestry technologists. They like these vests. Surveyors seem to use something similar. It's got a big back pocket. It's got a kind of a rucksack pocket up here, and then big pockets in front. Mainly, I would think for, field manuals and compasses and whatever. And it's kind of a sturdy, expensive device, but it does have the sort of thing which makes you stand out so you don't get run over by a snowmobile or a car or whatever after dark. I have searched high and low for a very light backpack that has all the essential ingredients but not the weight. Because today you find that people, when they put all their bells and whistles into a device to carry the load, you already are wearing 10 pounds. And that's, weight is murderous. In my voracious reading, I read about the military and the sort of thinking that would go in. Like, for example, not so long ago I was reading about the campaign, the Canadians that were fighting in Italy. Well, the powers that be had decided they had to carry so much ammunition, so much equipment, so much. Now I find I know I'm carrying too heavy pack when I have maybe spent 3-4 hours walking and the arches in my feet are giving out. That my physical ability to continue walking is seriously hampered by the fact I'm carrying such an enormous weight. So when they try to cover every eventuality by supplying the soldier all this extra ammunition and this and that, the soldier could hardly walk. He could hardly get to where the battle was going to be. And if he wore all of that, he was so slow and so encumbered that the enemy had a serious advantage. So you just can't sort of say, let's pile on a lot of the good things and then expect them to carry it. And that was one of the serious complaints, was the brutality of carrying such heavy loads. Well, anyway, I started listing through all the literature about what people seem to think is a good thing to pack with you. And in particular, from the perspective of the search and rescue person. And I found that when I got 50 items, I'm pretty sure those 50 items weighed over 70 pounds. And in my anxiousness to be able to compile a comprehensive list of things to carry, I found you probably have to leave 75% of that stuff at home and get to work and bring things that are portable enough and the weight justifies their portability. And I'll try to underline that and expect it. Here, for example, was one notion that I was trying to develop, and that's the foldable pot. You get thin enough aluminum, but the trouble is the aluminum that you can get readily is too thin, and it stores flat, and when you need it, and it might be something that you don't, every time you go out you make a fresh one, and you've created a pot of 8 cups capacity that folds absolutely flat for portability. Now you also got to keep in mind that if you miniaturize everything you carry and make it too portable, that's not good either. It's got to be functional, because this is probably one of the most functional type of pots there is. It's neither too big nor too small, neither too heavy nor too light. It's 7 cups, which means that that's my breakfast. If I have nothing to eat, I drink 7 cups of hot water in more or less within half an hour, and that starts the day. So that there is no question about my blood getting thicker on account of not drinking enough liquids. I know that if I consume a pot of hot water, and the hot water that's been brought to a boil is a special type of active water. You've driven out all the oxygen, and it's very close to oral rehydration therapy. So if you've drunk water that has been boiled and the oxygen has not returned back into the water, your tissues will essentially get 10% longer survival just because you're drinking water, and it's not for the fact that it's hot, it's for the fact that the oxygen bond has been broken and you're being able to absorb that water so much with so much less effort, and that's a significant problem. So boiling water to purify it, maybe even carrying water, digging holes where you want to scoop the dirt out, measuring water. Perhaps the most important part is measuring the intake of water to make sure you don't get dehydrated. Of course, most of us know this trick that if you pinch your skin back here, and unless you got other maladies, if that doesn't spring back almost instantly, you're already under the negative effects of not having enough fluidity in your system. There's two extreme things that you really got to pay attention to. One is you got to get enough sleep at night, and the other is got to drink enough water. Those are the two things you address first. So when you put together a survival kit, you'll say, whatever the components I include, how do they participate in those two things? How does this item contribute to my being able to sleep that much better or meet my water needs? If it contributes to any other issue, you're barking up the wrong tree. And you might not be doing yourself a service because you have a misconception about what goes on in the world. There's a fellow that makes these potsy, Don the Doer from Four Dog Stove. He asked me, what's the ideal pot? So I said, hey, it's a pot that has 7 cups capacity. It means 7 cups of tea for 7 people or breakfast for 1 person. It's got robust construction, so it lasts a lifetime. The original one that I was given by Tom Roycraft, that's the one it's so battered, it's maybe lost 25% of its volume. But I told my wife that when I get cremated, that's the urn for my ashes. Anyway, the lid fits so tightly that should your pot fall or drop, you don't lose very much. And Don also makes these unbelievably scientific developed little bush cookers that run a wide variety of fuels that happen to fit in there. This is the scraps from building his titanium stoves. What's left over, he converts it into this. And you can see he makes it, because that's $115 with the pot and that titanium device in it. And crazy people will pay that very readily. But if you're looking for the ideal pot, it should be durable and it should be black. It takes half the fuel to boil the water in this pot because it's black. So why the heck do we, always shiny, make the outside of our pots like mirrors? Because you're your own worst enemy. You haven't looked at the science. Why burn twice as much fuel when just by changing the color of your pot that you save that much, you might say, or get your water to boil that much quicker? Well, anyway, we don't have to say too much more outside of maybe purification tablets or whatever, where you're in a rush and you don't want to set up and light a fire and boil it. So maybe there's these drinking straws too, that when you suck out of a moose hoof print, that you don't acquire something that will bother you. So water, say your kit components should address that. Now the next thing is how you're going to sleep better at night. Now you have some serious alternatives here. One is to carry enough sleeping bags that no matter how cold it is, when you crawl into those sleeping bags, you're going to be warm enough to sleep. If you crawl into one bag and it's not warm enough, you take a second bag, you put it over the first. Crawl in, it's still not warm enough, you put a third. Eventually you will have enough sleeping bag that when you crawl into it, you'll wake up 8 hours later without having to light a fire, keep logs, bucking wood, sawing wood, chopping wood. But you've got to carry the bulk and the expense of a good sleeping bag. Now you might extend it by having a proper, larger parachute, double layer bag, and then you put your foam mattress in, your sleeping bag, and the snow won't get between your bag and your mattress. You're now light years ahead as to I guess some people might call that bag a bivy sack or something, but it's not. It's actually very simple. It's sewn so that when you turn it inside out, it's a double bag, and you turn it, and you can use it sort of as a tarp or as almost something put over your shoulders, or turn it inside out. It's a double bag. It's very simple if you want to play around with folded paper to figure that one out for yourself. So here, I still need time to work because I discover that this flexing makes these quite leaky at these corners. So I have to solve that problem. The possibility is that if I use 2 layers, this is the trays that you buy in dollar store, the pizza trays, and they're big enough to make that pot when it's folded. The description of the folding technique is in bushcraft. Make birch bark baskets that way. The other thing is that pot that's configured, when you fill it up and you want to go to full capacity, the slightest little tick like this causes it to dump. So you got to have two little things that to prevent it from tipping over and losing everything. But when I worked out the leaky corners, which I think there's a possibility that it might work that way, we'll be back in business with regard to the idea that the normal pot is kind of bulky. Now, something in between. This is Tom Roycroft, my guru. He seemed to be quite partial to this cooking kit. You might carry 1 or 2, and perhaps in here you would carry your OXO, Lipton soup, prunes, and barley sugar. There's something you might show some interest in because it might be rather relevant to you when you go off and you find that meal times are kind of far between for one reason or another, or maybe you are engaged in some pretty serious exertion trying to build a shelter or do things to make the victim comfortable. Well, OXO probably is at the head of the list. It's something that I learned early in my career, that the spices that are used in something like chicken noodle, chicken with rice soup, that sort of thing, that saltiness, or with OXO, whatever bouillon you prefer, whether it's beef or whatever, that when you make a hot drink out of something like OXO, it short circuits the access to your stored energy. You'll really lose weight fast. I verified this over the years. So instead of having bulky food, you're drinking something like OXO, especially in the winter. This is not very good in desert conditions. In desert conditions, it tends to be candies and jujubes. Because for every pound of something like barley sugar here or a jujube, a jelly type candy, for every pound of candy, you get a pound of water. So it's an effective way of carrying your water instead of in tins, little things where there's a water deficit. So if you figure you need a pound of water a day, you carry a pound of candies. And you'll get the energy from the candies, plus you'll be getting the water derived for digesting a mold of carbohydrate you might get, especially something like candy or barley sugar. But this OXO, the moment you lag, you drink a cup of the OXO. If you're cold, you warm up. Because while you're metabolizing the flavors and the salts and whatever, you are drawing very heavily on your own reserves. So Lipton soups are kind of cunning. They take a small amount of material and you add a lot of water, increases the volume, and then you're living off your own body fat. And you get quite satiated usually if you're indulging in this. And when I learned this, I had a student that, he was actually an American, I remember, and he pointed this out. Well, in our university programs, when you got 30 people for 30 days, especially in when you're learning, if someone phoned me and said, we're going to go out for 30 days, we got 30 people, how soon can you pack enough groceries to meet our needs for 30 days? And I need 24 hours. I got that good at it. So you'll have as much to eat on day 1 as you have on day 2, and in the end you'll sort of agree that there is a reasonable amount of variety and that you never lag and feel weak while you're trying to paddle and whatever. But when you run out of other ingredients, you add more soup base. You might be ferociously hungry, but when you say to people, well, do you feel weak? They realize that as hungry as they feel, they have the power and energy to continue on because you're using this mode of operation. Of course, if you're taking notes furiously, and I don't notice anybody taking notes, you would say, hey, I better look this up and research it and just find out exactly what the hell he's talking about. But anyway, I would feel that this has probably one of the neatest things I ever learned besides the other one where I learned that there are old trappers and so on, in their days, prunes were, dried plums were available. And you can go, I don't know if you maybe had one every half hour, you'd probably go for days to get the energy that you're getting by digesting something like a prune. And there's ones you can get with stones. And if there is no water, you want to get the prunes that have the stones in them. They haven't been removed, because after you eat the prune, you let the stone work in your mouth, and it reduces your discomfort, the discomfort of thirst, very seriously. So anyway, you can put something hot on, and of course there is instant coffee, and what goes to make a good cup of coffee. If you take sardines, the ones packed in oil, Tom Roycroft was of the opinion of all the canned goods available, these was worth the weight and effort to carry a tin of sardines for the benefit that you get from the sardines. And then you've got a container you can make primitive lamps out of. Matter of fact, if it's packed in soy oil, you've got 2 hours of light. And with some of these little lamp stoves, they call them kudliks, eventually your skin will start to turn black from the soot that is formed. Well, if you take and change the color of your skin from your normal Caucasian white by using some kind of polish that changes it to black, that will get you the same insulation value as a business suit, which is 8 clo. Clo is the first 3 words of the word clothing. So for example, if you carried tights that were black and you put them on, the amount of benefit that you get in keeping warm in the winter's cold is phenomenal, considering how small a package those black tights took up and how they operate on the basis of creating some dynamics in there that allows you to be able to be comfortable to a temperature 8.8 degrees colder. That's what the benefit that you get from changing your skin to black is. Now you're as comfortable at 8.8 degrees colder than you were earlier, believe it or not. I hope these secrets, which took years to dig out, have some use or significance to you, because it takes a lifetime. I've been at this for about 45 years. Now the next thing that helps me to sleep is this Mylar. Now there are 3 things that really put us into the space age. Mylar, the metal match, and 550-200-7, which is otherwise known as paracord. There are the 3 things, space age. If you understand the usage of these things, they play a very powerful role in your getting on with what you have to do when you're out there and you end up finding that your life is threatened. Now the Mylar that's in here, it's like popcorn. When you take the package apart, this is what it looks like when you buy it at the store, and only Dollarama carries this at $2.50. I found others which cost $10 for essentially the same thing, but these things are not necessarily the same, because there is probably 5 times more Mylar in this than there is in that so-called survival blanket. Now that survival blanket is an example of, I don't know how to explain the frustration of people who manufacture material and really should be doing something else. So they create a piece of reflective material and they call it a survival blanket. In Sweden, there was talk about outlawing the sale of this stuff because people would go and say, oh, a survival blanket, oh, look, marvelous, how little room this takes, and it takes the place of a blanket, a woolen blanket. This is not a blanket, this is a sheet of material, because a blanket has thickness to give you insulation. And if you're going to call anything a blanket, it has to work on the basis of a thickness that gives you the benefit. This is a shiny material that reflects back a source of glow. You glow to the equivalent of a 150 watt light bulb. There is greenhouses so sensitive that when you walk in, you got to turn off this light because you'll disrupt the whole balance in there, because your glow plus the glow of the light is going to create some havoc. So you turn that light off, do your stuff, and when you leave, you turn that light on, and then nothing goes out of balance. We glow to the equivalent of a 150 watt light bulb, and if you believe CSI, a detector can fly over and you're buried a meter in the ground and they see your glow coming through the ground. Now, I have no reason to doubt that, but I find that very phenomenal, that your glow can be detected from low-flying aircraft that way. Well, anyway, you got to think in terms of insulation and reflectivity. They are two different things. So when you take this Mylar sheet and you try to use it like a blanket, they find you even worse state than you find that you have just about killed yourself because you misunderstood the use of this thing. And there are all kinds of pitfalls like that with regard to misunderstanding something. But anyway, this is how you put away your blanket, so-called survival blanket, after you've used it. Somewhere in here I must have one to compare, show you that they come very neatly packaged. Then when you use them, like you say, they're like popcorn. They become 5 times as big and you have the problem of trying to stuff it back. So there it is, unused, there it is. That's the only compact way, again, by twisting it. We do this twisting bit for a lot of things because you find that sometimes the bulk of things are infuriating and you gotta have a way to debulk the things. Now, the size of a wool blanket, it's neither here nor there. And I kept saying years ago, it'd be nice if they would make them 3 to 5 times bigger and charge me many times more because of the frustration of trying to make small little pieces of stuff, trying to pin them into place and trying to keep them from being blown away and everything because they're just pieces that are too small because they decide for some reason it's appropriate to make them the size of a wool blanket, which is erroneous. Now, to save on opening one of these, one that's open, take it apart, and we'll see here what we have. This is not heavy. If it's never been opened, it doesn't take up much bulk. So this is a tube tent. Here, a fellow extractor. So you put a rope through there, and you lay down inside, and you will find that this stuff, you got to learn what destroys it. If you try to do this, it's extremely strong. But if you get an edge, it's just the wind will shred you can't just put it up like a tarp because the edges are not stabilized or whatever, because manufacturers don't seem to know that you got to do something to that edge because the slightest nick make the wind just blow it apart into pieces. So while it's strong from the middle, it's extremely vulnerable, but it's so easy to erect by putting a string in and then crawling into it as simply just that package. But it's not as good as it could be. Now we'll throw this aside there. Let us quadruple its usefulness. Here is the things I stuck in here and say, well, maybe that's about it. The weight I got here shouldn't be more than this. Maybe it'd be better if it was half that. But anyway, I kept stuffing in here until I said, hey, it's getting to be a little bit too much. What have I got in there? Well, I've got one of these. We'll come back and talk about these things later. So here we have another one of those Mylar blankets, but I have modified it. I have cut it. It appears that it takes 2 strips, and then they use this tape to put them together to make your tube tent. But if you cut it and put in a panel like this, Now do you ever have something? Because you can face the clear panel to a small fire and get an immense benefit. Because if you don't have a panel that reflects the heat of the fire just as badly as it reflects your glow, so in order to remove this, now once unfortunately you put the panel in, now it's like popcorn. You have to devise a special way to fold this to get it back into its compact form. But without this panel, it's half there, and you don't actually need to have a tube tent, because you could, Kelly, he does his arrangement where everything's all prepared, but you're using the little blankets. So now you could use this, which is 5 times bigger, and so on, as an extremely inexpensive, so you must be looking at less than $3, $4 maybe, to create this effect. That it's like Kleenex, you might say. Use it once or twice and you make a new one because it's not that expensive. There are other modifications you might put in there, but that's, I would say that to me, this is in the space age, and when I found these tube tents at Dollarama that day, I did back springs and hand flips, and it was like I couldn't believe that such an improvement, that such a large piece of Mylar came available. But when you do this, you'll discover that this Mylar is not the same as some of the others. When you pay $3 for a blanket or $5 for a blanket, many of them are so, you can't see through them because the coating is, this coating on these are in keeping with the cost. I just throw that away. The other thing you see coming up is this. This is probably, well, I know costs $1 in the dollar store, and you put this in your window, and I find it almost perfectly, you can actually shop around and you can find things like this for $50. This is probably maybe $1 or $2.50, but it's in the dollar store, and it's meant to put in your windshield to reflect the sun, and you get a tremendous amount of benefit by using it instead of a closed cell foam, and it's still thin enough and big enough. Generally, when you carry something like this, it actually only needs to go from about your neck to slightly past your knees. Beyond your feet, it's a completely different story, and a lot of people are bulking, carrying more bulk and everything because they insist on making a mattress that's 3 feet wide and 6 feet long. All the other stuff, that as you keep cutting it shorter, you discover that almost half that works just as well as the full piece. So you're not carrying around unnecessary bulk and weight and so on. And as thin as this is, you could almost put it on glare ice and actually find that very little of the cold is conducted through something like this because it's so shiny on one side. When it comes to shininess, it must be mirror shininess. If it is not mirror, it's a fraction. So when you're playing with materials like that, it's got to be a very glossy shininess to work properly. When you glow to the equivalent of a 150 watt light bulb, a light bulb is only this big. Your body is 3 square meters. So it's a very dilute light. And you need all the shininess you can get to bounce that back towards you. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, you take something like this, and you keep moving it closer and closer to your cheek, and when you get it to a certain point, all of a sudden, you feel that there seems to be a warmth coming from that direction. And if you get closer, you might even discern that with our crude sensory heat detectors, that you get a significant warmth that's coming there. Now, if you push it against here, you'll feel it's quite warm, but the trouble in a while is the moisture that has to, the insensible moisture that has to pass out of your skin on a continual basis starts to create a buildup of moisture, and the physics effect is it reverses things and now becomes a radiator fin. So the rule about shiny surfaces, the closer you get to them without touching them, the better they work. But the moment they touch, you're going to have all these problems of the condensation eventually. In an hour or 2 or 3, you have a grace period, a relatively short time, but as far as paramedics are concerned, that grace period is adequate for their needs when they come upon you laying in the ditch in 3 feet of snow and you're blue from laying in the snow because you're ejected from the car, and the snow cushioned your fall, and then the snow chilled you. Exactly the sort of things you want to do to a person who suffered a severe automobile accident, because it gives you way more time for the doctors to do something about your condition because you've been chilled. But you chill too far, well, maybe it's not good. So by wrapping in Mylar, you send to stabilize it and keep it down to a useful level without it now becoming a problem. Now you could buy sleeping bags. I've slept in a bag like this. But talk about popcorn. If I take this apart, it'll fill almost a 45-gallon barrel, and I won't be able to squeeze it compact again. This is a sleeping bag, and I think it's probably good to 25 below. Look how compact that is. It's made out of Mylar. It's got many layers of Mylar, many cells, little elastics all over the place, and when you start taking it apart, it expands, and it functions. Except being out of Mylar, I think you stay too long. I didn't stay long enough in there to swelter, but I think you probably might find you swelter. But these probably cost as much as a regular down bag. So, who's going to fund that? I mean, after all, you're rescuing people who usually did something stupid to get into trouble. You don't want to, you want to stay reasonable and not spend a couple of $100. They're not going to pay you. You're paying for their stupidity, because they don't say, oh, sorry, I did something stupid. What do I owe you for that? You saved my life for that. No, they never say that. It's got to be out of your pocket or the government's pocket or something. Anyway, generally, if I go anywhere, I say to myself, what's smarter, to bring enough sleeping bag, or do you bring all this other junk? Well, the other extreme is that, of course, here, people are making these. So you got a sweet saw blade in there, holds your pants up when you need it. You construct a functional sweet saw blade. The definition of a survival saw is something that fells a hug-sized tree. Because you might just find that tree available to you. Well, 2-3 times in my life for 45 years I did. But you're ready for it. Because if you can fell a hug-sized tree with this saw you belt, you're ready for anything smaller. And you got to realize that if you're going to choose to build a lean-to, all out of natural materials, you have no clear plastic window and all kinds of stuff like that. The amount of wood is take any vehicle you want, cut the logs as long as the vehicle is wide, and if the pile is as big as the profile of the vehicle, that's the amount of wood you're probably going to have to buck up every 24 hours. And if you don't believe me, I don't give a poop, because I don't care. It's not going to be me that suffers. Because the issue is that's hard work. And there's a lot of fantasy involved in there until you start getting involved in trying to live that way, and you discover, well, I can live that way because I'm an Olympic axe user. You should see what I used to be able to do when I was a younger person with an axe. You come up to a 10-inch tree, big spruce tree, you fell the tree, section it into arm span limit, and section it probably in like 5 to 7 minutes. But you stand about 10 feet from me and you can feel the heat coming off my body, because I can make every stroke count and I know how to use that axe. Well, how many years do you have to train to become skilled enough to become that the axe doesn't contribute to the problem by making your toes longer or shorter depending on the angle at which you hit them? So a saw blade in a survival situation must not be shorter than that, and the throat on the saw has to be at least that, because when you go like that twice, you'll see that gives you a hug-sized tree. If you fell a hug-sized spruce tree and cut it into sections, it takes you 10-20 minutes to cut it down, 10-20 minutes for each section. You got 2 logs hug-sized. That'll keep your super shelter warm for maybe 12 hours. Whereas with the other way, where you get smaller dimension stuff, the pile is prodigious because you find it burns faster and it's not controlled and you got to stay further away from it and so on. You can't even apply for your fire badge until you're 35 years old to begin with, because no one under that age has the capacity to absorb the knowledge you have to have in order to be a master fire user in that environment. Well, I might be pushing it a little bit, but it's not that far off. If you think you know a lot about fire, wait till you meet people who do, sort of thing. For you know, using fire for warmth, for cooking, for signaling, for incinerating, and all that stuff. So you've got the shelter that creates a bubble that effectively captures the warmth from the sun or the heat generated by a suitably made fire. And the components of that arrangement perhaps fit in a parka pocket, and they take the place of a sleeping bag, but you know you're not going to be bored too much because you're going to be kept so busy bucking up firewood. And so, I don't know, less than $5, you have a very versatile, inexpensive, light, effective way to capture all kinds of science and find that you've reduced the amount of effort to maybe a quarter of what you normally would have if you're just going to use a saw and an axe and build yourself a camp in the old-fashioned way. Any questions about what I've said so far? No? I gotta take a swig of Coca-Cola, I'm slowing down. So, to review, every item, first ask, what role does it play in me being able to sleep that much better tonight? What role does it play in me being able to meet my water needs? Everything else is awfully secondary. Your groceries, whatever else you're doing. So now we look at stuff that maybe isn't so directly involved. It might be to do with fire. Well, fire. The rod, the huge lighter flint made out of this issue of a material that makes this ferocious spark. It's a rarity in physics and chemistry. It's not just any old thing will catch the carpeting on fire on a stroke like this. So this rod, I calculate, is probably 10,000 fires. That's like a big backpack full of matches. Today you go to the Canadian Tire store, you pay $5, almost $6 for 2 boxes of matches. You go to the dollar store and you pay $1.25 for 300 matches. So there you pay $6 for 500 matches. So today the matches that come from Canadian Tire are worth at least a penny each, I think, if not a little bit more. So money is flying out of the window. Here, this is, if you design this right, it's also very good to have with you in a bar fight. Because if you got it right and someone annoys you, hit their knee. Don't hit them in the head. That's not really fair. Really incapacitate their ability to walk by whacking their kneecap. And a rod like this will work fairly well in that regard. Now the knife and the rod are so interrelated in some, because you can double up. Instead of having a separate scraper, you can have a sharp in the back of your knife like a skate. And then you'll have it. So here's a full stroke, then a half stroke, and then a quarter stroke. And instead of having 10,000 fires, you now have 40,000 fires. Because you can light a fire with a centimeter long stroke because you've learned that. Marvelous material. But it ages and softens. So by the time you've kept it 10 years, probably you can maybe only get a third of the strokes out of it. I don't know what the process is, but it seems to go that way. So the older the rod is, the less fires you're going to get. Some people will take their knife and incorporate the rod as part of the knife, so when you put the knife on your neck, you've got both your fire and your knife right there. I also include these tweezers. Someone gave me a set, and I thought, hey, that's great. Then I saw that they sold them in Lee Valley Tools. They're almost $10 for a pair of scissors. Boy, somebody has got a cottage at the lake and snowmobiles and a yacht and everything, because they manufacture these and sell them for $10, and there's probably 10 cents worth of material in there, but they sell it for $10. That's the way to get rich. Like, the other day I was reading a story about Bill Gates. And according to this guy that wrote the book, Bill Gates is a very ordinary person. Just by the fluke of luck, he was in the right place at the right time. And that's all there is to him. He isn't an astounding genius or anything. He's actually probably, Kelly is a lot smarter than Bill Gates. But Bill Gates is the richest person in the world because of the series of flukes. Good luck that he had going forward, the way things happened in the historical aspect. I mean, that would be another type of lecture to go into great depth about that. But the person was saying that people in general figure that if you're not rich, you're stupid. And they seem to think that if you're really rich, then you're really smart, that you're a genius. And generally, when people study the personalities of those people, they discover that that's not the case. They're just like you and me, except that they have had a fluke and good luck that they happened with their finger on something that they could exploit so seriously that it didn't take that much genius to do. Anyway, another thing that participates in your sleep and comfort is the ability to cope with mosquitoes. In the dollar store, these things must cost less than $1. And at the same time that you have the mosquito head net, and if it's too tight, they can bite through the net, but that's why they're $1. So you got to take two and cut them apart and make one out of two. Then you have a loose enough. But they happen to be excellent bags. And if I have a balloon, which it costs $1.25 or $1.50 in Dollarama, I can carry as much water as I can. If I had a gunny sack that's big enough, I have to stop filling this balloon at a certain point because I won't be able to lift it off the ground. But it's so awkward in trying to pour water in the balloon, you got to have a funnel. And here we have a funnel. Maybe before I cut it up, I can try to see if I can have some fun with it. One thing that I figured was kind of good to carry, especially in scaring away bears and things, were these things, they call them horns or claxton. That must be Greek when you say horn and say claxton instead of horn. What do we get? Ooh! What do we get? It won't work. I tried it earlier. I don't know why it doesn't want to work. But it won't work when you think that, boy, I could really direct, but the acoustics and everything just don't work. I think a bear would probably think twice about biting you if he's a few feet away and you start blaring that. Your ears would hurt so much. So it doesn't break my heart that I can't use it for a megaphone. So I look at the issue of my balloon, and maybe if I, well, that cut easy. do I fit this? Now I can fill my balloon. You know, I go there, and it doesn't have to be any longer than this, and it doesn't weigh very much. Oh, let's see if this improves anything. Oh, maybe it's more directed. I'll have to play it. I better not throw that away. Take it home and play with it. But anyway, so here you got a balloon. Heat your water to boiling. So you carry 4 balloons and 4 of these to confine the balloon, or I hope that maybe the interface between the fabric and the balloon, that if you had boiling water in the balloon, you might not hurt the patient. Or, I don't know who, I found this in my junk. This is probably handy to have this to attract attention. But if you wrap the balloon, now there's one way of wrapping and another way of not. If you make this into a square, then you can make it into a kind of a, this is how you fold a cup out of paper, and it lasts quite a bit if you use freezer wrap paper. Now you've created something that would hold water up to the rim. Well, if I put that balloon full of hot water in there and tied it off, and then took that and put it in this bag, the reason I want 4 balloons is you put one at the neck, one under each armpit, and one in the crotch to accelerate the warming process. Of course, there are some people that talk about after drop, which actually the whole issue of after drop is one of extreme erroneous perception. Today, maybe on the internet, there will be people that will point out that no such thing as after drop. It's some other mechanism that causes you to kill a person by applying heat too much to the extremities. And the explanation that has been current about 10, 20 years ago is not a valid one. But that's another story. That's more advanced type. But this is probably warm up your bag, warm up victim, carry water. Now the device here that goes with the balloon here is the scarf that has 100 uses. It's started as a very simple scarf, and now it's expanded into something that, so you see the issue of how you wrap up fabric to make it as hard as a rock. And so it's a bag. Then people says, well, what are the dimensions? And you'll say, well, if you can crawl into it easily, that's probably shouldn't be smaller than that. And there's so many different features that you can build into this scarf. You have to have 2, because you can't put them all into one scarf. You put half of it into one, half into the other, and you get the best of all possible worlds. You're a magician when you have it. First and foremost, it's a scarf for the neck. And by the fact that I wrap my neck in the proper way and so on, this has the same value as probably at least a medium thick wool sweater, and the additional comfort and warmth that you get because you've wrapped your neck. Now I have written a book that we're going to polish up in the near future. It's a 400-page book on how to dress properly and how to design clothing properly. The whole issue. In that book, it tells you the places in the world where you don't have to wear clothes 365 days a year. There are a few places on the surface of the earth you can buy nude 365 days, 24 hours a day. You don't need any clothing, but those places are very rare. And we do know that the Eskimos dress in a certain way, and the Arabs in the Sahara dress in another way, and the Mexicans in another way, and the Egyptians in another way. There is 9 different ways of dressing. And if you study them, it gives you all kinds of ideas as to how to refine and sharpen your ability to dress and to be, your functionality as a responder can be seriously affected by your lack of knowledge in how to dress properly. And there are ways of dressing properly. But I charge extra for that. Now, This is also a mosquito head net. And thanks to Randy here, when we were trying to figure out where to put the opening to get inside there. Like for example, there's something, their opening could be on the ends, but it doesn't work so well. But if it's put on the side, at night when you're trying to sleep in mosquito country, you find that this will contribute a great deal to your sanity by, what's going on here? I'm lost. Anyway, you can find space in here. In some cases, it might contribute to more warmth around your face. One of the biggest bugbears in sleeping in a sleeping bag in the winter is the amount of frost that condenses and forms, the moisture that forms in your bag around your face. And recently I ran across an ingenious approach to that. You wear a balaclava that you wear normally as a balaclava, but if you put your head through the face opening, the other part is designed to capture all the moisture. So you're breathing through that. So you get two uses for your balaclava. One is to use it as an ordinary headgear in the daytime, but you use it to capture the moisture given off by your breath much more effectively while you're in the bag by putting your head through the face opening instead of the normal way. And I'm working on refining that. Now, one end of this is a mosquito head net. So if the mosquitoes get really bad, I can use that end. Black must be the color. Any other color will drive you nuts. You look through black mesh, it's not bad. You look through white, murder. Look through any other color, it's very distracting. Now, this makes a very sexy bathing suit. I'm not going to demonstrate, but well, I'll say that a man uses one string around the waist, a woman uses two, one under the arm, well you don't have to, but one under the armpit and around the waist, and it is very sexy, open sides. Grade 6's parents of grade 6 kids really don't like it when I swim in the swimming hole with their kids without a bathing suit. It seems like I get into trouble with that. So, actually, I'm not going to be late. Well, you find that some of the exercises with Kelly, you had all that grass over there. If I could capture, how long would it take for me to put so much grass in here that it's about that thick? And if I really put a good layer of grass on my bed, and this is big enough, it's probably almost going to function as if it's a sleeping bag. And if you get into a mossy area, first thing you do is when you light your fire, you make a rack and you put a lot of sphagnum moss on that rack to dry it out. And when it's dry, you fill something like this, and then you can pull it over yourself, and voila, you saw how compact it was, and the benefit that you can get from that. So your scarf itself could play a very big role in your ability to be able to sleep better in spite of the mosquitoes and whatever that goes on in the night. Every book on kits and everything always brings up these industrial garbage bags that fit in a barrel. A quick way to make a rain protection, and under certain circumstances, once you understand the evolution of moisture given off by the human body, and they sell the clear ones and the black ones, probably they're worth the weight that it takes to carry them around. There are a lot of places you end up where maybe they're mostly handy to pick up all the garbage that people have left behind. The other thing here is the equivalent of 7 bread bags. There are so many uses for something like that. You know, probably if you're going to include 7 plastic bags that would accommodate bread, might as well throw in a package of paper clips, a bag of marshmallows, and maybe, I don't know, find a broken hockey stick, cut off the curved part. I noticed some people hike with regular hockey sticks. They don't bother cutting off the crooked part of them. Those give you the resources. You know, like a bag of marshmallow, 2 bags. Always the big problem is, how much do I take? Well, if you have any doubt, take 7, because you can't really go far wrong. But like I say, with balloons, well, how many balloons? Well, you want one in the neck, you want one in the crotch, you want one under each armpit. That tells you, maybe gives you an idea that you'd like 4. When you're going to take bread bags, likely you're going to use them between some layer of socks to try to keep your feet dry, because the footwear you're wearing is not rubbers, and you don't really like that refreshing flood of cold water every time you walk through a slough. So you put on bread bags, and then maybe you... But if your sophistication on knowing the issue of how to deal with footwear causes you to use bread bags, like there's one Norwegian explorer. He was going across northern Canada all the way across. He ran into trouble with his footwear, and he was using bread bags. And he didn't seem to know the difference between dry cold and wet cold. Well, that's another story. Wet cold footwear is rubber boots. Dry cold footwear is boots that you wear in such cold winter where you're drinking coffee and you spill the coffee, you feel the coffee going right through to your skin. That's the type of footwear you got to wear when it's 40 below, 60 below. And the Canadian military spent a great deal of effort to develop the mukluk, the military mukluk. And the funny thing is that when you study the history, they were trying to imitate the porosity of the Inuit footwear. And then somewhere down the line, the people who developed it died, and the people that were now stepped into their shoes didn't understand the issue. Because soldiers would come back and say, you know, when I step in a puddle, my boot gets all wet. So they rubberized them on the inside. And then when you use them in dry cold, you're really seriously entertaining frostbite to the feet. Because when you're wearing those marvelous mukluks, you're supposed to wear them for a week before you start thinking about taking serious steps to dry them out. But if it happens in the first day, look inside to see whether they've been rubberized beyond the ankle to keep them waterproof. That's the ankle, without writing something on their caution. This dry cold footwear has been changed into wet cold footwear. They didn't tell you, so that you can play the game of survival to see if you're still going to have any toes after your exercise, you might say. I'm having a lot of fun. I don't know if anybody else is. Here's another thing. Probably next to that Mylar tube tent, when I ran across this, for the next week I was doing handsprings and backflips and yelling with joy. This is called mule tape. Paracord, 550, tensile strength of 550 pounds. Safe working load of 200 pounds. Elongation of 15%. So if I stretch this cord, a 100-meter piece of this cord will become 150 meter. And if you don't understand that, it might cost you your eye, or it might even cost you a tooth, if you're lucky, rather than your eye, because you can replace teeth better than eyes. And you can tie the most unbelievable, best, most useful knot in creation, which ties better with paracord than any other material. It's called the jam knot. If you're not familiar with that, and you're as old as you guys all seem to be, you sure missed out an awful lot about understanding knots. The worst knot a man ever ties, he ties with his tongue. The marriage knot. I've been married to the same woman for 50 years, 51 years, so I can joke about marriage. Getting married is like eating mushrooms. You don't know if it's good for you till it's too late. Getting married is like eating at a restaurant. You figure you ordered a pretty good dish till you see what the next person ordered. Getting married is like taking a good hot bath. After a while, it's not so hot. Falling in love and getting married is like experiencing a whirlwind tornado. And one day you wake up and you find the house is gone. Anyway, where are we at now? This is, so I said paracord, $550. This is $2,500. It's called mule tape. Now, if you as a human individual can take 2 sticks and exert a 1.5 ton pull, I think it deserves a place in your survival kit. Now with this, I have to be careful I don't include too much. Generally, when you say how much, 7 arm spans of paracord as a start. But if you have room left over in your kit, fill it with more paracord and you won't be sorry. If the question ever arises, hey, I've jammed all this stuff and there's still room. What should I put in there? Not OXO, more of this. You won't be sorry. Well this, if it's long enough, you can create a winch that is remarkable when you learn how to wind up rope. So I got a pole that's wrist thick and it's from here to the wall. And I got a stick about this long. Boy, I can pull vehicles out and I can do all kinds of phenomenal pull forces. But because it's flat and everything, by using it, I'll take 2 sticks and wrap around and I've got a stretcher. Or if I double this all up in the same way, I instantly have pack straps. Or if I cut them the right length, I got snowshoe harness. Or, and it keeps on going because a flat ribbon-like material that's so strong has got such a wide variety of uses. Now TELUS uses this for pulling cable through conduit. When they use it once, they don't like to use it again. So if you happen to have a TELUS acquaintance, they might supply you with that stuff. Otherwise, the telephone number and everything, it says 2,500 pound mule tape by Neptco Incorporated 401-722-5500. If you were taking notes, you'd have written that down. Because sometime in the near future, you'll be saying, oh, I wish I wrote that down. Tom Roycroft was big on the use of flares. Biggest concern with a lot of people is bears. You'll intimidate a grizzly bear if you get this thing going. And don't just sort of play mouse, light it and charge the bear. That's a tactic you better use because you just stand there, you'll wait till it's gone, then he'll come and get you. You want to go and you want to make him snort in some of the vile smell that's produced by that sulfurous, overpowering, whatever. You have to hurt that bear to make sure he knows it's safer to stay away from you. You've got one chance. I don't know, you got 20 minutes to chase that bear away. And if you're having trouble sleeping because you see so much bear sign, have this sitting under your pillow so you can feel it under your head, and it'll make you feel confident enough to maybe you will sleep in spite of the fact that you hear a lot of noises going on outside. Oh, we have this here I ran across on sale, $350. I would say there's a lot of merit to put this on account of twigs in the eyes and things. But the beauty of this is you don't have to carry a flashlight because you got for $3.50. People can see you coming and you can see where you're going. Now, I always tell people that on the darkest night of the year, you still can see 1,000,000 times better than a blind person. You should learn to exploit your ability to see in darkness. Because if there's anything that's as polluting as the manufacture of batteries, so in the issue of, you could probably do it next to the flush toilet. Probably the next worst thing is the manufacture of the batteries that we tend to use in almost everything, run by AAAs and AAs and Ds, and makes your head swirl about all the way they designate the sizes and numbers. The situation is that, like batteries in anything, you're vulnerable because the battery can go dead. In my library, I have many books, and one is the articles are written in the American GI newspaper, weekly newspaper, the Stars and Stripes. Your survival was not very long if you had a flashlight. So when the new person came to replace, the old dog will say, hey, have you got a flashlight? Oh, let me see your flashlight. And they smash it because they know it's extremely dangerous to walk around using a flashlight, because there's nothing better to aim at than someone who is trying to see their way with a light. And then the person standing beside you who doesn't have a flashlight ends up getting the shot into the stick as well. But anyway, the issue is that you have to decide for yourself the need of, these were on sale for $2.50, and they blind you almost. That, you know, light has its place. I always carry a light because I'm old, and it's this big. And this little light can just about blind you. But on the internet, you can order flashlights. So they're so brilliant that if you encounter a mugger, you blind them. Just turn on the light. They can't see because you've eliminated their ability to see for a long time because of the extreme brilliance of that flashlight. Anyway, I'm going to say I got a couple more minutes. What else should I talk about here? Tape and the felt pen so you can write messages on it. Pack strap plus cord so you can fashion pack frames very quickly. Compass, wire. Oh, if you take a glue like this is many glues you can test. They're quite volatile when you smell them. But if you streak a glue on a pile of sticks, a flame will leap from your match to the. So the glue is an inexpensive firelighter, as well as your comb. If you carry a comb to keep your hair neat, you got to light a fire in emergency. The teeth on a normal plastic comb will burn quite furiously. So you're going to carry stuff. I always prefer the wax paper from Jello. It's very thickly coated with wax, very waterproof, very ignitable, sort of thing. Well, I probably have outdone my welcome here by talking so much. Unless there's some questions here. Anybody got any questions about anything? Anything? It doesn't have to do with what I was talking about. There will be a document that will result from a lot of this that will be try to make sense out of it. That if your organization sees fit to want to know all that stuff in a written form, it'll eventually show up, and it'll also show up in a video, because we will take the time and I'll make a 2-hour video out of this. I'm talking. Now, you stop at a certain weight. Some of the stuff I threw over there, a pot, all that shiny stuff over there, maybe some OXO cubes, paracord, the metal match, and leave it at that. All this other stuff you can get by without.
So, Borders, we do have a question.
Yeah, I just have one question. I see you have an axe, and you also had the Swedish saw earlier. Do you have a preference for, because you were saying you have to chop down a hug with a tree. Do you have a preference for that, between an axe or a saw?
I think the saw is much safer in the hands of a modern person who hasn't had a chance to train. Because using a saw is like using snowshoes, using an axe is like using cross-country skis. So it's going to take you 3 years to become a well-educated cross-country skier. It'll probably take you twice as long as that for you to become an accomplished axe user where you might be qualified to instruct. Now you're looking at an axe that's logum, the Swedish term for perfection. An axe that handle fits in your armpit. You can hold the hand. That's the right length in comparison to the lengths of your arm and bones of your arm. And this is the weight here, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 kilograms. I couldn't believe when the Swedish Army put these things up for surplus. The 3 crowns of this being issued to the Swedish Army is still there. But that you're looking in there, you take a picture of it, you can't ask for something. It's a compromise between being big enough to be able to really work well, but bigger would be better, but bigger is more cumbersome to carry and whatever. But this most certainly will cut your shoelaces. It won't make your toes longer or shorter as much as it'll. I'll tell you, I've seen it happen where a person chopped a disc off of his ankle bone the size of a quarter. Probably giving birth under difficulty is less painful when doing that.
We have time for one more question if anybody wants to ask one more question. David?
What prompted you to gain so much knowledge and develop a skill in the woods? What started all that?
Well, I think initially I wanted to have some subject to write on. And after analyzing True Romance and True Confession, the best paying of all the magazines except for maybe Playboy and Sports Illustrated, I realized that it was probably less trouble to learn how to camp instead of learn how. It's hard to answer. My career, much to the chagrin of all my brothers and sisters and relatives, it seemed to be like a leaf blown this way, that way, this way. You could never guess where the hell I was going to end up or go. It just happened that I was particularly intrigued with scout manuals. And maybe Huey, Louie, and Dewey have got something to do with what I got into. You know, they were the nephews of McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck.
They would go camping and they would take a woodchuck manual. I tried to send away for one. And then people told me there's no such thing, it's a figment of imagination. And I said, I'm going to write that manual.
So, Moors, on behalf of Search and Rescue Alberta and all the member teams that we have in here and all of our responders, we'd like to thank you for sharing with over this time that you've given us. And yeah, we have Jonathan to make a presentation of our crest. And I would like to, as responders in the room, give Moors a round of applause. Thank you so much for your dedication to your craft. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Jonathan, who will bring us into the next piece here.
So next piece is going to be the mock search here tonight. Participants of the mock search, you now have 10 minutes to go get your kit and radios and report back here. This will be the CP to find out the scenario. So carry on.